Hi, everyone, and welcome to QuickBooks Online for contractors and construction, plus Knowify. Now, if you're in the construction business or you're a contractor, you're probably using QuickBooks Desktop or looking into working with QuickBooks Online, already using QuickBooks Online. And in this video, I'm partnering with Tonya Schulte, which I'll introduce in a second, who's an expert in construction. That's actually her niche market, to discuss what are the sort of the pros and cons of working with QuickBooks Online for contractors and construction, and where does Knowify, a third-party app add-on, help you grow your contractor construction business. That being said, I'll give you a quick introduction about Tonya Schulte. The name of her business is The Profit Contractors. She's a niched accounting QuickBooks consulting business. She's a host of the Construction Junction Roundtable and the Construction Junction podcast. I strongly recommend that you check those out. I will put links to all of her contact information in there. Tonya, give me a 30-second elevator pitch and why you focus on construction and how you got into the QuickBooks construction consulting business.
Yeah, absolutely. I've actually been in construction accounting all of my career. I worked in corporate construction accounting starting in 1998. And at some point I realized that I really wanted to help like small to mid-market businesses run with the big dogs. That's our tagline. So we really help them grow their businesses and reach the next level.
So that's an interesting one. Run with the big dogs. I'm trying to picture myself as a person owning a construction business that's, maybe third, fourth year in their business. They just reach $1 million in annual sales, if you want to call it that. I know sales is not the right term in construction, but annual construction income or construction billings. And now they're starting to grow. They have maybe 10 employees, some additional subcontractors, maybe bought a couple of trucks and some equipment. And they're sort of in that trajectory to start bidding, the same as the big construction companies. And because you're in the smaller size of construction company, you can do the work better, faster, more efficiently than the big companies. But some of the of your potential clients, all these bids you're putting in, might not take you serious because of the size of your company, and you don't have maybe the history as quote unquote the big dogs. So I think that this attitude of running with the big dogs is, hey, could we add an accounting consulting? Could we add an accounting system? Could we add some technology that allows us to, at least from a bidding, estimating, invoicing perspective, from a system perspective, give our potential clients the illusion that we're big and growing and we can do the same thing that the big companies can do. And just having the right technology allows us to do that. Would you say that's where the sentiment comes from?
Absolutely. And so many times when there are those smaller companies and they're getting ready to put out bids, either the general contractor will ask them for some certain type of financial statement that they have never been asked to produce before, like a WIP statement, a WIP schedule, or they may be needing to get bonding for some of these bigger jobs. And again, exactly. The bonding agent's going to be asking them for certain things that maybe they've never had to produce before. So that's that step up to that next level.
Right. And that's really where it all ends up, right? So your bonding and your insurance is what gives your customers the assurance that you'll be able to do the job correctly, or else there will be coverage. But in order to get that level of bonding and insurance, you have to show financial statements that look like you're one of the big construction companies, right? So that's where the accountant is sort of the not the superhero, but I would say the Yoda to the story, where we can guide that small business owner into, getting all these requirements to be able to do the bigger jobs.
Yeah. And our goal is that client becomes the superhero in front of the bonding agent or the banker or the general contractor.
I agree 100%. Tonya, it's a pleasure to have you with me to do this demonstration. And also towards the end of the video, we'll discuss this, but Tonya and I actually partnered together with Knowify and QuickBooks to build a 6-part webinar series, deep dive into how to set up and how to run and how to manage and how to eventually produce these awesome financial reports using QuickBooks Online Advanced and Knowify. So your small construction company, your growing construction company, your mid-sized construction company starts running with the big dogs, as Tonya says. About me real quick, I'm the CEO of Quick Bookkeeping and Accounting LLC. I have a YouTube channel. If you're watching this in YouTube, you know this. Okay, that's obviously pretty obvious. There's my email if you have any questions for me. My niche, my specialty is not construction. I work with enough smaller construction clients to tell you I'm good enough at teaching you sort of the basic of construction accounting, especially for the smaller ones. But Tonya is the person I've been referring most of my growing and mid-sized construction clients, and they're jumping into using QuickBooks Online Advanced plus Knowify. So let's start by talking about QuickBooks Online. And I do realize that there's another version of QuickBooks out there, QuickBooks Premier Desktop or QuickBooks Desktop Premier and QuickBooks Desktop Enterprise. And we're going to kind of shine the light in QuickBooks Online, even though we know and acknowledge the existence of those systems and the greatness of those systems. But nowadays, most people want to be online. They want to use their iPhone, their tablet, a Mac, a PC, and they need a cloud-based solution. QuickBooks Online is the only native cloud-based solution in the QuickBooks ecosystem. So even though we acknowledge the existence of other desktop legacy platforms, we're going to be focusing on what QuickBooks Online can and can't do, and at what point you need to add a third-party app like Knowify, which is Tanya's area of expertise, to be able to expand that capability. Let's start with QuickBooks Online Plus. And the day that we're recording this video, that's an $80 a month subscription. It might be more in the future as you watch it because, software companies get better and better and they increase their prices. But assuming that it's between $80 and $100 a month, that gives you an idea more or less how much QuickBooks Online Plus can work for you. Now, QuickBooks Online Plus can create sub-customers and projects so you can track income and expenses by that customer or project. We're going to do a demonstration of that. QuickBooks Online can include the tax burden in the payroll costs by customer or projects when running payroll inside QuickBooks Online. We will not be doing a demo of that, but just so you know, if you have both QuickBooks Online Plus and payroll added to that, you're going to be able to take the cost of the employees and the burden. Only the tax portion will be able to be assigned to that customer or project so you can get the correct profitability by project. QuickBooks Online can also do basic inventory management, which for construction companies is not really necessary. It's not necessarily required always, but I know many construction companies, they buy materials and they put it in a warehouse, they put it for inventory, and then they want their employees to check out, whatever materials they're using. And if they consume them in the job, you want to be able to consume those materials, add it to your job costs when they're consumed. So you probably don't necessarily know what the materials are going to be used for when you buy them. So you need to inventory them, and then you need to consume them, exhaust them when they're needed. And then you are able to do a budget for the entire company and also a budget by customer job or budget by class. Although I will tell you and admit that the budgeting versus actual portion is not the strength of QuickBooks Online for the larger construction companies, for the growing construction companies. If you're working with 3 to 5 projects a year, you can use all the built-in tools and you probably will be okay. So if you got, let's say, under $1 million in annual revenues, 3 to 5 projects a year, QuickBooks Online Plus by itself will probably be good enough. It will probably be even better than good enough. It would be very, very sufficient for you. Now, as your business starts growing and you need maybe more people accessing QuickBooks Online, you might be looking at something called QuickBooks Online Advanced. QuickBooks Online Plus is limited to 5 users. So QuickBooks Online Advanced gives you the access to up to 25 users. So if you got maybe 20, let's say 10 or 20 people touching QuickBooks in different ways, somebody's doing an estimate, somebody's doing an invoice, somebody's entering a bill, somebody's entering a timesheet. So you can have different users doing different things, and you do have certain limited access restrictions. They're developing this part even more. So you're going to see even more innovation in the limited user access portion. But this is what QuickBooks Online Advanced does different than Plus for the most part, is the expanded number of user capability. Also, it's important to mention that it has unlimited accounts in the chart of accounts, unlimited classes and locations. With Plus, you are limited to 250 accounts and 40 classes or locations, which is more towards a smaller sort of company. Although Tonya will probably agree with me, any company with more than 250 accounts probably has a problem with their accountant, doesn't understand or doesn't know how to help you limit that down. But we do understand that some construction companies, some contractors just need a whole bunch of accounts because they want to know the cost, for gas for one of the trucks that's under a particular group of trucks. So you have to have all these layers of accounts in the chart of accounts. So I get it, but that 250 account mark, it kind of clears the distinction between QuickBooks Online Plus and Advanced. QuickBooks Online Advanced has custom fields, including drop-down custom fields. So if you want to track additional information that QuickBooks wasn't built in to track, we can do that. We are going to do a demonstration of that. We're going to show you the custom fields part. You also have the custom report builder, which is an ever improving feature of QuickBooks Online Advanced that allows you to create pivot table style custom itemized reports. And that this is, if you're familiar with Excel, you know what pivot tables mean. We won't do a demo of that, but there are some videos in my YouTube channel that explain that. And you're also going to have custom workflows, like being able to approve a bill, being able to approve an invoice before it gets sent out to your customer. So I think that for that growing construction company that's not yet ready to add another app and add some additional complexity into the mix, QuickBooks Online Advanced will be a great solution. Now, what happens when we bump into these 5 key areas in our construction accounting that will require for you to go beyond QuickBooks? And when I say beyond QuickBooks, it doesn't mean ditch QuickBooks, because QuickBooks will still be a great basic accounting software, your basic general ledger, your banking, your receivables, your payables, that will all be controlled by QuickBooks, including bank reconciliations and financial statements. However, there are 5 key areas that QuickBooks Online doesn't do that you are going to need a third-party app like Knowify to do it. And this is Tanya's area of expertise. So this is my turn to shut up and let Tanya speak for a little bit.
Yes, as Karcher was saying, there are so many features that QuickBooks Online can do wonderfully for construction contractors. And the great part about Knowify is it really, as we were talking about earlier, if you want to help your clients run with the big dogs, or if you as a growing construction company are at that level where you're ready to run with those bigger companies, these are the types of things that it's going to do in Knowify to take your company to the next level. So AIA-Style progress billing. And when I say AIA-Style, of course, it's not generating exact G703 and G702 documents. But for most of your construction companies these days, those are not necessarily the exact documents required. They just want to see that main page, which has all of the summary data, and then a schedule of values, right? And so that can be easily and quickly created within Knowify, and even then transferred to the G702 and G703 if you need that to be done. That's probably the number one thing that most of our clients value in Knowify is the ease with which that style of progress billing can be created, because that can be such a bear and cost so much administrative time. So we're going to talk about that. And then service and maintenance job dispatching, tracking, and invoicing. So again, for like specialty trades and subcontractors, if they're in that place where they're going out and building new construction projects, but then they're also on the back end warranting those, doing the maintenance on some of those types of projects, and then maybe doing some service work for some of their clients, that's built right in as well. So you can do both from the same tool. And then job scheduling, that's not something that QuickBooks has ever been built to do. So it's great that within this tool that you can use for all these other things, you actually have job scheduling and time tracking available in that same tool. We'll demonstrate that a little bit and show you some things about that. And then budgets versus actuals reporting. So you mentioned earlier that there's some version of budgets versus actuals that we can do within QuickBooks Online itself. But the budgets versus actuals reporting in Knowify, it's almost a seamless thing. So all of the information that you're entering is going straight into that budgets versus actuals reporting without any extra workarounds or steps like we have to do in QuickBooks Online. So if you're used to being able to just click and say, I want a budgets versus actuals report for this job and not have to do any extra workarounds, absolutely easy to do in Knowify. And we'll talk about that. And there's one of the cool things about the budgets versus actuals reporting within Knowify is you actually have another layer. You can do budgets versus actuals, and you can also do budgets versus committed. So if you want to see maybe purchase orders included in that budgets versus actuals reporting, so you can kind of see what committed costs are versus straight direct actual costs that have already been incurred. There's some settings in Knowify that allow you to do that as well. So I love that there's a little bit of nuanced layering even to what we can get out of this reporting. And then work in process data. So back to what we were saying. So now when we're growing and we need to have these extra tools and reports and data at our hands, work in process is one of the major ones that's going to be easily accessible within Knowify.
Awesome, Tonya. Thanks. And we're going to go ahead and jump into QuickBooks Online and cover some of the features inside QuickBooks Online. And then after we cover the features of QuickBooks Online, which will give you some frame of reference, we're going to jump back into Tonya. She's going to open Knowify, and she's going to show you a quick teaser of all 5 of these features. So you sort of get a general idea what that looks like using a third-party app. And then I'll ask Tonya, hey, what's the perfect type of business that you would immediately think, yeah, that's a perfect candidate for Knowify? And that's how we'll conclude the session. Understand that this is going to be a teaser for a 6-part webinar series that's going to be 8 to 9 hours of content. So if you're serious about getting into understanding how to implement construction accounting from zero, we're going to take you to the entire journey of using Knowify to set that up. Tanya's going to be leading the charge. We're going to be doing it together. I'm very excited for this project, and we'll discuss how you can sign up for it. There's a paid version, there's a free version. We'll discuss what that looks like. So let me jump into QuickBooks Online, and I'm going to do a couple of demonstrations for you. Again, the part that you wanted, I want to see what it looks like inside the software. So let's talk about that. I'm going to start by talking about projects. So in QuickBooks Online Plus, and we're discussing Plus at the moment, and then we'll talk about custom fields at the very end. This is where Advanced becomes the upgrade that you might be looking for if you're going to be staying in QuickBooks Online as a smaller construction company without having to add Knowify, which is what we're going to recommend for the larger, fast-growing mid-market construction companies. So let's start with projects. So here on the left-hand side, you're going to see in the left navigation bar, you're going to see a link for projects. Once you get into projects, QuickBooks Online will show you a list of all projects that you have created, and it'll give you a status of that project, a financial status anyway, of all the revenue, all the income, and all the costs, what your profit margin is, and how much time, this is timesheet time, has been accumulated to this project. So this is one that already shows you some information. We're going to do one from scratch. You can see how that information gets filled in here. But I'm going to click on it to get a little bit more detail. And then you get to see where this information comes from. So you get to see the 5,100 comes from income. If I click on the drop-down menu, it tells me specifically which income account in my chart of accounts that information is posting into. I can also open cost of goods sold and see these direct expenses. Are they coming from subcontractors, from payroll? Are they coming from materials? That sort of thing. And then you get to see your profit. And then here in the top, you get to see how much of the invoices are open or overdue. So you get a lot of information in one screen about the project. So let's start from scratch. Let's go back into projects. And then I'm going to create a new project for an existing customer that I have. I'm going to click on the top right where it says new project. Just click on that. And then I'm going to call it kitchen expansion. So let's say we're doing a kitchen expansion for a current client. I'm going to click on the drop-down menu, and it's going to be for this client, Angie Graham. Okay, in the notes, I can put additional notes if I wanted to, and this is just for internal information. All I'm doing is just creating the entity, creating the project. So I'm going to go ahead and click on save. So now the project is created. I'm going to go back into the project dashboard, and you get to see the 2 projects here, one that has information and one that does not. I'm going to start by creating, let's say, an estimate, right? So I'm going to go here to the new button, the new transactions button, and then I'm going to click on estimate. By the way, I'll make a quick pause here just because we're recording this at the end of 2022, and we're going into this transition where I would like to make a quick pause here because we're recording this at the end of 2021, and we're going through this transition where the left navigation bar in QuickBooks Online is being redesigned. And if you're watching this in the future, your left navigation bar might look slightly different. So if you click on the gear menu on the top right, you can have a button here that says switch to business view or switch to accountant view. So you can actually switch to accountant view and have your screen look exactly like mine. I just wanted to add that in there just because you might be watching this and your left navigation bar will look different. You're like, I can't see projects. Well, that's because yours is in business view mode, not an accountant view mode. So if you want to follow along, we're going to use accountant view because I'm an accountant, Tanya's an accountant, and quite frankly, accountant view is always better, regardless. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and click on new and then click on estimate. And almost everything will start by an estimate because you will always do an estimate first before getting started. I click on the drop-down menu. I'm going to type kitchen expansion. There it is. And that's a project of Angie Graham. So that's pretty clear there. We got Angie Graham and the kitchen expansion. Let's say the estimate date when we created the estimate was September 1st. And we're going to not look at location for now. We're not going to look at all these drop-down menus for now because these are sort of the custom field and the additional features. We'll talk about that in a second, but just focus on we picked the project name. And then down here, we're going to put what we're going to do for this customer. So let's say we're going to do labor and we're going to charge labor. We're going to put in the estimate discrete labor of, let's say, $10,000. And then we're going to put discrete materials of $3,000. By discrete, I mean, we're actually exposing it in our estimate. In the webinar series, we'll get into tons of details and we'll get into all of the weeds of the difference between lump sum and fixed price and time and materials and all these different ways that people do the invoicing. I'm just going to simplify for the demonstration where we actually are breaking down labor, materials, and possibly something else like maybe equipment or something like that, or overhead, whatever. We're going to expose all this information and say, look, in this project, we're going to spend $10,000 in labor, we're going to spend $3,000 in materials, and we're going to charge $2,000 for overhead. That could be permits, whatever happens to be. Okay. So we're going to have this project for $15,000. We created the estimate. That's really all we need to do at that point. We're going to go ahead and click on save and close. So that's sort of the first thing that we always do when we create a project. We're going to start with the estimate. Then what we're going to do is we're going to start invoicing in progress. Let's say we agreed that we're going to invoice them in 3 phases. We'll do 25 to start, maybe 25 in the middle of the project, and then 50 when the project's finished, when the customer is going to pay us that second half. Let's say that's the arrangement that we made. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and create some of the labor costs. And just to simplify, we'll focus just on subcontractors for now, just because it'll be a lot harder to get into payroll and try to squeeze that information in this video. But we are going to get in the webinar series, we're going to get into payroll. We're going to discuss the implications of payroll. So don't worry that we're not covering in this video. We will cover it in the webinar series. So let me start by just creating a bill for a subcontractor. So I'm going to go to new, create bill. And then I'll select a subcontractor. Let's say this person here, FG Life, is going to be one of our contractors. And I'm going to come here into category and I'm going to type subcontractor expense. Now, at this point, we could geek out about whether we should use category or we should use items. That stuff will be covered in the webinar series and some of the pre-recorded content that comes with the webinar series as well. For the time being, let's just assume that we're just going to take it straight to the GL, straight to the direct cost account. So for the time being, we're just going to take it straight to the GL, straight to the cost account, and sort of move on from there. On description, we can put here 3 days laying tile or whatever, right? Whatever details you want to put in there to remind you what was happening. Let's say that the charge for that was $3,000. And the key element here is customer project. We're going to select our kitchen expansion. That's everything, right? Everything in the QuickBooks world is, am I assigning expenses to that project? If I miss that, I'm screwed. So that's a really important piece. You got to make sure you get that part right. Done. We got the $3,000 in there. Let's say this happened on October 2nd, 2021. It's just a bill. We haven't paid for it, but that's fine. It's an expense. It goes into our project costing nonetheless. I click on save and close. Click on yes. We are all set. So I went ahead and refreshed the screen. And now you see that we have $3,000 worth of cost. Crystal clear, right? Now let's go ahead and invoice 25% of that estimate. So I'm going to go to new, go to invoice, and I'm going to go ahead and select the project. So I'm going to come down here and type kitchen expansion, and we're going to invoice that. And then here on the right-hand side, it says, hey, would you like to add contents from the estimate? So if I click on add, it will then ask me, do you want a progress invoice? And again, that could be a whole nother deep conversation. For now, let's assume that we are going to progress invoice, which means we're going to break down every item in the invoice by the percentage that we arranged for that first invoice. So that's going to be 25%. Let's say that was the arrangement that we made, 25%. And it's going to say each line is going to give me a dollar amount, right? So I'm going to click copy to invoice. And then you're going to notice that each of the line now gets multiplied by times 0.25 because the original quantity was a 1. And then you're going to see every dollar amount be calculated. And again, probably, maybe we haven't bought the materials yet. Maybe we haven't incurred the overhead expenses. When we progress invoice, we don't look at that. We just invoice the entire amount by that percentage. We do have the choice of itemizing which line items we want to invoice. That was an option in there, but we chose just to do a blanket percentage just for simplicity's sake. I'm going to go ahead and click on save and close and click on yes. And now I can get out, go back into my projects menu, and then we get to see that our income is $3,750 and our costs are $3,000. Let's take it one step further and let's take a look at a profit and loss report by job. So I'm going to just go to my reports and go to profit and loss by customer. Profit and loss by customer. I get a report that shows me my entire P&L for all my customers, and I can filter those out. So we'll wait until this finishes refreshing, and then we have a whole bunch of data here. Every single customer we have here, we can filter that and only see a specific group of customers or projects. I can click on customize on the top of the screen. I can go into filter, and then under filter, we're going to have an option here that says customer. I simply just put a checkbox there under customer. It enables it as a filter. And then I can come here and just type the kitchen expansion and select Angie Graham kitchen expansion and then click on run report. And then I simply get a profit and loss report just for that project. Now, if Angie Graham has multiple projects, we're going to see everything under Angie Graham if we select all those projects. But for the time being, you see right there in the middle column, you got the kitchen expansion, you got the breakdown of what was labor, what was markup, what was overhead, because we broke it down by item. It's because we did that we get the breakdown on the income side. And then the only thing we spent so far is $3,000 in subcontractor expense. And then we get a net operating income of $750 or a profit of $750. So if I go back into the projects screen, and then I go into my kitchen expansion project, so click right on it, I can run a P&L report straight from here by clicking on project report. And then I go into project profitability. And then I can click on that, and that will take me into the exact same report where I didn't have to filter it. The previous example is maybe I want to see 2 or 3 projects at the same time and compare them, right? Because sometimes comparison is a valuable piece in our construction business, especially if we're doing same type of jobs over and over. We want to see us do it better, more efficiently as we get better at it, as we understand that type of job in the future. But if you want to go straight into that P&L by job, you can do it from the project screen. If you want to see multiple, you use the original example that I showed. Last thing I'll show budgets versus actuals really quick. I'm going to click on the gear menu on the top right, and then I'm going to go into budgeting. So I'm going to click on budgeting, and there is a restriction that I need to add up front with the QuickBooks budgeting. This is very powerful, but QuickBooks still only uses years as a logical function for doing budgets. So when you have a construction job that crosses the year, it becomes really complex because you have to sort of close out the budget for the year and then do it again for the next year, so you can kind of see them in a year per year basis. With Knowify, it works a little bit different, and we're going to cover budgets in detail in the webinar series, but Tanya's going to do a quick preview of that for you as well. So I'm going to go ahead and click on add budget, and I'm going to call this the Angie kitchen expansion. Okay, so I'm going to give it a name, and then I'm going to say which fiscal year we're talking about. That's what we discussed earlier. On the interval, I'm just going to do yearly because I'm not so worried about how much we spend on a project per month. I'm really just care about the entire project in whole. I wish, we had the option to just go unlimited number of years, but that's not how the budgets in QuickBooks are configured. And then I'm going to do subdivide by customer, and then specifically choose Angie and the kitchen expansion. So I'm literally creating a budget simply for that kitchen expansion project. Okay, then I'm going to click on next, and then I'm going to put, and remember, the most important thing about projects really is the cost side. So I'm just going to focus on the cost at the moment, although you can budget all sorts of things in here. I'm just going to go into my cost of goods sold, and I'm just going to budget how much I'm expecting to spend in each one. So let's say I'm expecting to spend about $600 in equipment rental. I'm expecting to spend about $2,100 in materials. I'm expecting to spend about $8,000 in subcontractor. I happen to have another supplies and materials account that might just be confusing. Let's let that one go, and then we click on save. So there's my budget. I told QuickBooks that I'm expecting to spend only $10,000 in this project. So I'm going to go ahead and close that out. And now I'm going to run that report. I literally going to tell QuickBooks, hey, tell me how we're doing with this particular project. So I'm going to click on the action button and click on run budget versus actual report. Go to that. And then I get the same P&L by project that we saw earlier, but now we're going to see the budgets next to it. And then we're going to see the performance versus the budget next to it. So are we over or under that project? You'll be able to see that pretty clear in there. So I'm going to go ahead and click on customize here. And then I'm going to go back into filter. And then we're going to click on customer. Same deal, right? We're going to go into Angie, select that, and then click on run report. Unfortunately, you do got to do that extra step there with the filtering. And then we get to see the kitchen expansion. We see right here that we have a budget of $600, $2,100, and $8,000 for those three cost of goods sold direct cost categories. And we've only spent actual, right? That's the actual column. We've only spent $3,000 on the subcontractor expense. So we have $5,000 left in our budget for subcontractor. I'm going to leave this screen here just so we can see how this works in real time. I'm going to duplicate the tab here in the top so I don't lose my report. And then I'm going to add some materials to this job. So I'm going to go to new. Let me go to expense. And let's say that I use my credit card to buy some materials at, let's do Home Depot. Okay. And then I'm going to come down here and type materials. Again, another great moment to geek out about whether we should use categories or items, but we're going to resist the urge of doing that at the moment. And let's say we're going to spend $1,800 in materials. We'll put here cement, and under project and customer project, we're going to go to kitchen expansion, select that, good, click on save and close, and that will save the materials expense that I pay with that credit card. I go back into my report, click on refresh, okay, or run report, click on refresh, and now I'll be able to see I spent $1,800 in material versus my $2,100 budget. I got $300 left in there. So you start using budgets as your business sees fit, but that's in a nutshell how you manage the cost budgeted versus actuals in QuickBooks Online Plus or Advanced. I'm going to go back into the overview screen, and we're going to change gears for a second. I'm going to show you one great feature of QuickBooks Online Advanced, which should be by itself the one that makes you decide, I think I need to go from Plus to Advanced, which is custom fields. Now, at the moment, QuickBooks Online doesn't have a good job status manager. That's just not a thing in QuickBooks Online. So the best alternative I found to that is to grab the original estimate, put a custom field to that, and then run a report that shows the custom field next to that estimate. So I'm going to go into the drop-down menu. I'm going to go into the magnifying glass, go into my original estimate. And then what I want to see is a drop-down menu here of maybe something like the project manager, or something like the field supervisor, or something like the original salesperson, or something like the status of the project. That's where custom fields become really, really useful. So I'm going to X out of that here for a second so you know what we're going to do. I'm going to click on the gear menu. I'm going to go into custom fields, click on that. And then I'm going to create a new field. I'm going to go to add field, and I'm just going to call this job status. So we do job status, and we're going to make this a customer driven custom field. We can make it transaction driven too, or customer driven. Either one will work, because customer means it goes into customer related forms. I'm going to go into estimate, and I can either print it or not print it if I want to. Printing it would be kind of useless, honestly. So I'm going to pick no. But if you want to print that, you can do that as well. Then on data type, we're going to click on drop down list, and we're going to create our drop down menu. So we're going to start with bid, right? So it's just in bid mode. We can put started, and Tonya might be laughing because I might not be using the right terminology. Okay, I can do pending permit.
That's the interesting part. Different types of construction companies will even use different statuses here.
Correct. We can put here completed, and then we can put ready, right? So ready and completed might mean two things or not. Who knows? Who cares? Honestly, I'm not a construction expert. You guys are. Tonya is. But maybe completed means we did our part, but we can't do anything because we're waiting for the customer approval. We're waiting for the last permit. We're waiting for something called a CO, the certificate of occupancy, right? So I can put ready/CO, which means I actually can charge my last invoice. That's what that last thing means. And for the construction company, that's what it means. Can I get paid for the last piece of the job? So again, like Tonya said, this is the interesting part. You make this what works best for you. Some people might not use this, might use percentages, 0%, 10%, 20%, 30%, because percentages makes or makes more sense to them and how they run the business. So I'm going to click on save. And then at this point that I've done this, I can go back into my estimate. I can make sure that that drop-down menu shows up in my estimate, which it does. And let's say we're going to put this in permit pending. Then I'm going to click on save and close. And then I'm going to run a report that shows me my estimates, including that custom field. All right, so let's go ahead and run a report. We're going to click on reports. And then we're going to go to find report name, type estimates by customer. That's the report you got to use. Estimates by customer. I'm going to go into dates here and click on all dates, click on run report. So I'm basically going to see all the estimates by customer that exist at the moment. And then I'm going to click on the gear menu. I'm going to click on show more. And then I'm going to click on show status. And then I'm going to exit out of that. What's beautiful about that? Now I get to see all my customers, all my projects per se, the estimate in that project, and the job status. So this could be a great job status report. I've actually have a video in YouTube. I'll put a link in the description where I do like a whole expansion of custom fields for job status. So you can see that. And that's covered in the pre-recorded content of the webinar series as well that you can access. But this will give you just a really good idea for how custom fields could be really powerful, and you can use them in whichever way makes most sense for your business. Okay, so enough of QuickBooks Online Plus and QuickBooks Online Advanced. Let's now switch over to Tonya and have her do a demonstration of adding on Knowify to get this additional functionality.
All right. So when we come into Knowify, we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about those 5 things. I'm just going to right off the bat point out that I love that on this opening welcome screen that Knowify is rolling out, it says who is logged in. And one of the reasons I love that feature is because we have clients who might have several users in Knowify. If they're using a password saver program such as LastPass or something, maybe they logged in as someone else. So it's nice to know you're the right person that's logged in, and the things that are going to be tracked under your login. So that's a cool feature. But let's talk about a couple of things that you touched on. I said AIA progress billing is one of the main reasons that our clients love this. So we're going to just start by jumping right into that contract jobs area of Knowify. And with the budgets versus actuals, and again, we'll dive deep into the weeds in this when we go into that actual webinar. But what I love is that budgets and bids are very closely tied. So you had to do a bit of workaround to go to a separate place into the gear icon to get to budgets and QuickBooks Online. Whereas here, all of that's tied into one job, and it's very easy to see how that's all tied together. And so when we dive in, right off the bat, we're seeing all of, just like you were seeing in projects module, we're seeing the revenue information and the cost information all in this one easy to read dashboard. So I can see right away, my revenue numbers, my total cost numbers, and how that breaks down. I can see if anything's been retained. I can see how much I have left to bill for the contract, and I can see how much I have left in the budget for all those costs. And then I can see my overall profitability with a dollar amount plus a percentage amount. So I think this is a brilliant, beautiful way to see some very clean, clear-cut data about everything that's happening on this project from a numbers perspective. Also, I can kind of see, I love that it's telling me in bright red, oh, we have a budget overrun here. So that's another great feature, again, of this being all in one space, like what's going on. This is something in bright red tells me I need to go investigate and find out why is our budget overrun. So if we want to talk about the AIA billings, let's see which one of these looks like it needs to be billed. So this one, we obviously have quite a bit of costs. We're running at a low. I think that we're probably needing to be invoicing here. And so we're just going to click Invoice Now. So right from that main screen, I clicked Invoice Now. And I love that. Again, super simple, easy to use interface where I can just get straight into doing what I need to do right from that screen. This is an AIA-Style build project, and I know that as soon as I hit Invoice Now because it's asking me to enter the last date of the billing period. Otherwise, it would just pull up an invoice where I could edit right away, but because we're in that AIA-Style invoicing section, it's going to ask me right away, okay, well, what is the last date of the invoicing period? So let's go with the last day of the last month. And then again, it pops me right into what I can easily recognize as an AIA-Style bill. And why is that? There's schedule of values sitting here for me to bill off of. So in your example, when you had originally upfront created an estimate and you had that progress invoice that you could use in an AIA-Style bill, again, we have our top level summary information, and then we have this schedule of values. And that's going to be built based on phases of the job. Maybe it's going to be built on different, if you have building A, building B, building C, whatever it is that the owner of the project ultimately wants to see as the different breakdowns of how things are being billed across the job. That's what's going to wind up on the schedule of values. In this particular example that we're talking about here, this looks like a plumbing example. So we've got underground portion of the job, rough in portion of the job, and then trim portion of the job. And then maybe there's some change orders that have been added. And as we can see, we have available to bill. It looks like underground and rough in were already previously to this billed at 100%. We can start billing on the trim portion. It's showing us that previously billed all the way up to 100%. This change order is already billed. Another feature that I really like about Knowify, sort of helping you manage the job well, is it's letting me know that I can't bill this last change order because it was added after the fact of when I already said in that first step was the day that we're billing through. So it's helping me to understand what's available to bill. If a change order was approved past this date, it's not available to bill yet, typically. And there's, again, we'll dive deep into the weeds. There's ways if you accidentally entered the wrong date on that change order. So we could go back in and say, oh no, I need to bill that change order. It was actually approved prior to that time. So there's always ways that you can make that work. But let's say we want to bill 50% of the trim. And so we may also, just like you would see on a normal G703, if you're familiar with the schedule of values, we may also have some stored materials. Let's say that you purchased materials and you know that you're going to be using those out on the job site, but you purchased them ahead of time. And now you have, as you mentioned earlier, you've stored those in the warehouse. And you're going to send pictures over to the owner and let them know you have stored, let's say, $6,000 worth of plumbing materials on site or at your warehouse. And we're going to bill for that as well. So we're billing for work complete plus some materials that are stored somewhere waiting to be added to that project. And then we can click this preview, and this is where a little bit of that magic happens, right? So if you're looking at this and you have looked at AIA documents before, you're clapping and screaming for joy right now, right? Because this looks like an AIA This is your G702 summary page. You can see all of the data that you want to see, the original contract sum, what's been added by change orders, so the total contract sum to date, everything that we've previously billed, what we're holding retention on, the total earned less retention, previous applications for payment, and then this is the ultimate number that we've arrived at for this particular invoice. This is now the current payment that we're asking for on this AIA document, and then anything that's left to finish. Gives you that nice change order summary. And then again, you can add, there's notary public information. This is being signed by me today. And then here is our schedule of values page. So that breakdown, like we had just talked about, now is going to be shown here. So where we had previously billed these two phases up to 100%, now we're adding this amount of billing. So we've got what work was completed this period, plus again, we stored those materials. They're ready to be billed as well. And then all the breakdowns, including all of your totals and retention here. So once we've previewed this and we say, yep, that's exactly what I want to send, you can even download this PDF if you need to store it in some other location, or if you're going to email it. Or once you hit verify and finalize, you can click send email to client. So you can send this straight to the client without having to exit Knowify, go out to your email, send it some other separate way. You can send it straight out of Knowify if that's what you want to do. And also, importantly, because we're talking about the tie between Knowify and QuickBooks Online, right here as well, this is where I'm going to be automatically sending all this billing and data into QuickBooks Online. So I'm going to click confirm and prepare email, and it's going to pop up another screen where then I get to decide who needs to see this invoice, what subject line is going to be on that. So if they need to see maybe it just says invoice number 29. Maybe they need to see the name of the project. Maybe it needs to say attention, this project manager, and I can add it my own specific message. And it's also showing me this attachment. But remember I said earlier, we're billing for stored materials. And often with stored materials, I need to include some type of proof that those materials are stored somewhere. Often that's in the form of pictures. And so the great part about this is I have the ability to add any other attachment. So if I'm billing for those stored materials, right here within QuickBooks, I can send the invoice, click here to add an attachment, select the picture of those stored materials, and then that will also be added. And then I can even, preview all this one more time and click send invoice, and that's going to send it off to my customer. So fantastic AIA functionality. As I said, most of our clients, this is one of the main reasons that they just love this program. Moving on from that, talking about the AIA, another thing that I think is fantastic that we can do out here. Remember, I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of contractors who are doing new construction and they need to send these AIA bills, but they may also be doing some maintenance projects. So maybe they have warranty work that they'll set up once they've completed that new construction job. Or they may also have like a separate division, which is for doing some service work out in the field as well. And so two things I want to point out when we're talking about the maintenance work, something that's very cool that I love that Knowify does is we can go ahead and click add new. And if we click add contract job, let's just say we're going to add a new maintenance job. And we're going to do it for our commercial customer. Right here, we can set up a recurring like maintenance or inspection contract. So what's cool about this piece is that it will allow us, and again, we'll dive down more into this. I'm going to show you what this looks like on a different screen in just a minute. I'm not going to do one of these, but what it allows us to do is set up a recurring maintenance or inspection contract project that will then show up on our service jobs scheduling page. So it'll pop up. Let's say we want to schedule something out annually or maybe quarterly, biannually. We don't have to remember that and then set up a new service project for it every quarter or every year. What we can do is come in here and say, this is going to be a recurring inspection contract every quarter, and it needs to show up. And I need to ask my service tech to go out and do that next quarter and then the following quarter. And so we just are able to set up a new maintenance contract. So let me go ahead and get out of here and show you what that looks like. If we come down here into our service jobs, this is all of the services that are set up for today. And I see right here in the middle, I was just talking about, we set up those maintenance contracts. So as you can see, we have a little thing over here that tells us pending, scheduled, or completed. Well, 2 service jobs, these are regular service jobs, which were scheduled. This maintenance job is pending. So it got scheduled for today. So if I went into the project itself, but I want to see why it's pending. So if I click here and I click edit, I can see that the reason that it's pending is because the address for the main customer is what was entered, but there wasn't ever actually an address appended to this job. So that was pending because we don't know exactly where the service tech is supposed to go. So that's another great feature of those maintenance contracts or even your regular service jobs. If one piece of information isn't there for the service tech, it's always going to show up for you as just pending until you have all of the information. And then once we have all the information in there, we'll have scheduled jobs. Great. So all of your service jobs are going to live right here in one screen. You'll be able to tell your techs what they need to go out onto. Another thing that you talked about again in detail is that budgets versus actuals. And we touched on how we are able to create those reports out in QuickBooks Online. But over here, in Knowify, the great piece about budgets versus actuals, which I think makes it just so much more intuitive, if you will, about how we're going to look at the data. If we pull up any one of these contracts, again, just some great dashboard information happening at every level in Knowify. So we can see budget versus actuals information in a very visual format, which makes it easy to digest. I know, Hector, you and I are accountants, and so we like to look at reports. We like to look at Excel. We like to look at rows of black and white data, right? You and I both enjoy that. But our customer often doesn't. And so having this visual budgets versus actuals information, so we can see our actual costs total, what our materials actual is, materials committed. And then when I click into what's called plan and track, and this is really the budgeting feature that lives within Knowify, I break it down towards, okay, here's what I budgeted, total costs. This is cost information. As you mentioned, cost information being most important about what we're often tracking, budgets versus actuals. So total budgeted costs versus actual budgeted costs. And then it even breaks it down between these 3 types. So total budgeted materials, labor, and subs, and then actuals on the job, materials, labor, and subs. And then if I want to see that, if I do now need to pull that up in a report fashion, I'm just going to go into activity reports, click on reports. And it's interesting because terminology can be varied between different programs. So we were looking at profit and loss information over in QuickBooks Online, and you could pull up that profit and loss information and put it right next to your budgets in our budgets versus actuals reporting in QuickBooks Online. Whereas over here in Knowify, when I pull up what's called a P&L report, it's going to download it into Excel. And when that Excel comes up, I really actually have a profit and loss, but I have it in a budgets and actuals format.
Beautiful thing.
across revenue and costs, budgets, actuals, and then variance. And it's very nice. I love that it even gets all the way down to the bottom line. We've got profit percentages. Again, you and I being on the accountant side of that, we're watching that all the time and making sure about project profitability from that percent point. And management of construction companies should be taking account of that as well. So I love this budgets versus actuals over here. One important thing that I want to touch on is that right now I'm looking at budgets versus actuals. There's actually a setting. If I go into the administrative settings, too far. If I click on customize and I go to actual versus committed costs, right now I have this setting set, which says that I want to use actual costs instead of committed costs. And what we're talking about there is, what did I already specifically spend money on versus what do I maybe have a purchase order out and I have already committed to spend money on to maybe a subcontractor or a material supplier. So if I turn off that setting and I say, now I want to see committed costs, I'm going to see a few different things throughout Knowify. So now then, where this used to say materials actual, it's saying materials committed. And where this used to say subs actual, it's saying subs committed. And you'll notice that it's affecting my bottom line a little bit differently. It's changing even the percent of profitability that I'm looking at on that project. And that can be important because we might be looking at a wrong project profitability if we're not taking into account the fact that we do have some purchase orders out there on the project. And it's even going to affect that report that we just pulled. So I thought that's an important point to note, that there's a couple of different ways that we can look at quote unquote budgets versus actuals. Now, if I pull up that exact same P&L report, rather than this column saying actuals, it actually even says committed. And it's giving me a little bit of a different picture on that project if I have some open purchase orders out there. If I want to look at real time, that's one of the, if you will, buzzwords going on right now, real time data.
Yep.
Having that ability to look at committed costs, including even timesheet data, is going to be very important. So yeah, budgets versus actuals is one of the greatest pieces of this. And then I think the other thing that we want to talk about is that whole work in process data. So one of the last things I want to show, and again, we'll dive far into the weeds on this, but when we get into talking about WIP data, if we pull this job progress report, and here's something that is a little bit of an interesting tweak that happens in Knowify. I'm going to hit this button that says generate and download. When my reports get a little bit large, it's going to tell me you're going to receive the report via email shortly. Luckily, it is shortly. So if I get over here and open it up in my email, I'm going to download it out of my email so you guys can see what this job progress report looks like. And again, this is one of the things that as an accountant I appreciate about Knowify is that we get a lot of reports in Excel. So I have the ability to take that information and do with it as I will. But we can see on this job progress report all of that WIP style information. I do want to make the caveat that this isn't necessarily the exact WIP report that you would hand to the bonding agent. You're going to want to make sure that the dates are correct. And so from a dating standpoint, we'd have to make a few changes. And again, we can get into all of the weeds, but we have all of the data that we really need. We can see the original contract, any change orders. We can see what's been invoiced, retention. We can see if any payments have been made. And then across the board, we're looking at costs. So what the costs were to date, what was budgeted, and anything that's remaining to get all the way over to total costs. And then finally, that profit percent.
Tonya, thank you very much for that demo. Again, if you like this concept of becoming an expert like Tonya in construction accounting by leveraging QuickBooks Online plus QuickBooks Online Advanced and Knowify, we're putting together this 6-part webinar series. It's going to be Tonya and me. I'm just going to be there to add color commentary because she's the expert at Knowify, and she's been doing this for a very long time. We will have some accountants or experts in construction joining us. We will have some small business owners that want to get into construction accounting or evolve with what they have now with using Knowify. We're going to have maybe some people exploring different options, Knowify and competitors, and they really want to understand the tool in depth before making that decision. So there's going to be 2 ways you can access this webinar series. One, you can pay for it. Okay, you go to hectorgarcia.com/Knowify. The links will be in the description. It's $250. You have access to 6 live webinars, and you can watch the recording later. All the resources, all the slides, everything we use will be available there. As an added bonus, when you join the webinar, you're going to have access to a different webinar I did, which is QuickBooks Online Construction, not Knowify. So you understand QuickBooks Online in depth, and then you understand Knowify in depth as well. We actually finished that QuickBooks Online Construction series with Tonya at the very end, and her demo convinced me that, hey, I think there's more opportunity to get people to learn beyond just what QuickBooks Online can do. So you can pay $250. Most people are going to be doing that. Or if you become a certified Knowify advisor, which is free of money, but you have to spend some time, you can go into the website. I'll put links in the description. I'll put links to the slides. The links are in the slides as well. If you become a Knowify certified advisor, which requires you to spend probably about a day reading some materials, studying, and then taking out an open book exam, then you become a Knowify certified advisor, which is what tells Knowify, you have commitment to understanding the tool, and then Knowify will pay us, right? So they'll give you a coupon code that will give you free access to it. So I encourage you to go either route, but I suggest the best thing for you to do is to log into Knowify, become a certified advisor. It will be a day or less of work to do that, and then they'll send you the coupon, and you have access to our wonderful webinar, a 9-hour, $250 value educational content. Anyway, thank you very much. If you made it this far, congratulations. I think you're on the right path to becoming an expert in the QuickBooks construction plus Knowify consulting world. Tonya, thank you very much once again.
Thank you, Hector. Thanks for having me. I'm excited about the webinar.
Me too. Bye-bye.